Hey, how's it going? So, I'm going to start a little series about coincidences. I think these are some really unusual random coincidences that happened to me that showed how a lot of people that I know were connected. And sometimes you don't know that somebody way across the world or way across the country or some of the most random situations, you don't even realize that you're connected to them. And it started for me, started happening for me when I moved out, when I was first moved out on my own when I was 21, and I was sharing a little house in Rockville, the suburbs of DC. Okay, I was 21 years old. It was 1986. Okay, in the height of MTV punky kind of era. I had my roommate was a hairstylist. I'm a hairstylist. We were, wearing like funky new wave kind of clothes and that whole thing, and going down to DC and clubbing and all that. So we're in this little house, and then one day he's outside and he notices there are two guys who live next door. One of whom had a girlfriend who was sort of dressed like me, and he's out there talking to them and all this. So he comes back in and he says, "Hey, you won't believe this, but our next door neighbor, under these two guys, one of them has a girlfriend, and she's dressed like you, and all this, and similar hair color." At that time, my hair was like darker red. She had darker red hair and dressed kind of punky and all this, and I was like, "Oh, okay, great." So then somehow in the next few days, we made a plan. We all hung out. We got to know each other. We had a good time, and she was living in a condo nearby, about 5 minutes away, with a roommate named Catherine. The next door neighbor's girlfriend's name is Jean, okay, and her roommate's name was Catherine, okay, and she's like, "Oh, my roommate's really cool and all this," and Catherine's, we've been friends since high school, and it turned out had gone to a rival high school, not my high school, but she was a couple years old. They both were a couple years older than me and had gone to a rival high school, but in the same area, okay. So we had a lot in common. I hadn't met Catherine yet, but I was like, "Oh, I can't wait." I bet she sounds cool and all this. And she said we were the only two people that were into this kind of music then, because at that time, earlier, she's a little older than me and she's a little earlier, so that people were more into like what is now considered classic rock. She's like, we're the only two people that were into the punk and new wave music at that point, and we were just hung out together. Okay, so the next thing I know is a couple weeks later, I see Jean with a whole bunch of stuff, suitcases and stuff, moving in with her boyfriend. I was like, "Hey, you're moving in together," and she's like, "Well, not moving in together, not because it turns out my friend Catherine and I got into an argument one day, and the next morning I wake up one night, and then she's next morning I wake up, and Catherine has left a note saying that she's moving to California with her boyfriend. Okay, and she's like, and Catherine's mom wants to rent out the condo so she can get more money for it, because I guess she was like giving him renting it to him at a discount or something like that. And now that her daughter's decided to flew the coop and go to California, Jean's now on her own and would have to pay the rent on her own or get another roommate or whatever. And she really wasn't even working yet at that point in her career. She just got out of college, all this kind of stuff. So she's like, my boyfriend's letting me move in next door and all this. So then Jean and I become really good friends because her best friend has now gone away, moved to California, and she's moved next door. Okay, so whenever I needed like a girlfriend to hang out and do stuff with, Jean was right there. Okay, so fast forward 8 years later. Okay, 8 years later, I had lived in other areas, but then I had moved back to Rockville. And I, at that time, was living with my then boyfriend who had proposed. I'm planning my wedding. And we're talking the early days of the internet and the AOL and AOL chat rooms, and we're very new. And I often was going into like the MTV chat room, the sci-fi chat rooms, and lots of talking geeky topics and all this stuff. And at that point, I was going in there just chatting with random people. It wasn't like to meet anyone. We were just there having fun, just chatting about random stuff. Okay. So one of the times I'm in the MTV chat room, and people were talking about different bands, and it happened. And somehow somebody was talking about DC new wave and punk bands and different things. So then I got in on that because I would been into that music back at that point 8 years earlier, and playing also at the same time. And there happened to make friends with some people with this nice couple. Sometimes there was a husband and a wife, and they would also, the husband would be on his computer, the wife would be on her computer, and we'd be chatting about all kinds of random stuff. Okay, and talking a lot. And then I happened to mention that I was engaged and I'm planning my wedding, and they were giving me advice because they had just gotten married the year prior. Okay, so we had a pretty good rapport. So then, and every time I went on the MTV chat room, it was like, maybe like every couple nights, out of just bored at that point, if it's still new, go in there and chat, blah blah blah. Just like now, you go on to TikTok. I was always going in those chat rooms chat away. It turned out I would always be on with the same couple, and it turned out that the woman, her screen name had the word cat, okay, in the name, okay. So then I happened to say, out of the blue, I decided to ask her, hey, did you go, since we were talking about the DC bands, did you grow up in the DC area? DMV, Maryland, Virginia, the DC. She said, yeah, I grew up in Maryland. I said, oh, where did you go to high school? And then she says that she went to the rival high school, the same rival high school that Jean had gone to. So then I said, wow, what year did you graduate? Because a light bulb totally went off in my head. I thought, oh my God, what is this? What if it's this Catherine that had taken off and gone to California? And something in me knew. And she said, she said she graduated the same year. I said, oh my God. And I said, is your real name Catherine? And there was a pause. And she goes, how do you know my name? Okay. And I said, well, then I tell her the story. 8 years prior, I was living in the house, sharing it with my roommate. I meet a new friend who's, dating a guy next door. Her roommate decides to go to California. They get into an argument. The roommate decides to go to California with her boyfriend. And Jean and I become good friends. And she's like, oh my God, I cannot believe it's my best friend. It's my best friend since elementary school. You have been friends with her all the time that I left. And I said, yes. And so then I said, do you want me to tell her that I found you? And she said, yes, but I'm so afraid that she's going to be mad that I flew the coop, that I left her back then and all this. And I said, I don't think she'll be mad. So then I said, do you want me to give her your number if I tell her that I found you and she wants to talk to you? She said, yes, okay. And here's my number. And I said, so then I called Jean next chance I had. I said, you'll never believe who I found on the AOL chat rooms. And I told her how I had found Catherine and how I found them, found her and her husband, because it turned out the husband was the same guy that she'd gone to California with. So they, I told her, and she said, oh my God, give her my, and so I said, here, I've got the number, I got it all. And so then later I told Catherine that, she's going to call you, you're going to call, and it turned out they lived 5 minutes away from each other. The fact that they lived 5 minutes away from each other, but they hadn't spoken in 8 years, whatever they had gotten an argument about just was like no big deal. It was like they talked on the phone for half an hour. They couldn't believe that I had been the facilitator who had brought them together. And so it was like the three of us have been friends ever since then. So I've been friends with Catherine now for 30 years, and I have been friends with Jean, and these are not the real names, but I've been friends with Jean since 38 years. So that's just one of those random coincidences. We'd be surprised. So I have more coincidence stories. Some might go longer, but this is a condensed version of the story. But I think it's pretty amazing that you never know who you're going to find and how you're going to find them. So anyway, follow for more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.